Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space 11.10, The Death of Atoy Muzazi. We are back.
No!
It's over for him. This is my final
Say it's
season.
clickbait! Say it's clickbait now! Say it's a reference to the death of a salesman! Say it's the death of his ideals! He does not die in this chapter!
I've got him bound by my attacks. This is the final move. It's over.
No! I'll stop reading Aetheral Space if Atoy Muzazi dies in this chapter right now.
Don't worry, I'll kill him next chapter.
No! I don't like the title of this chapter, Tan. Change it, please! I don't like it. Oh, goodness gracious. Why don't you recap for once what happened last time, since you
So the landing
care
began
so
last
little.
time. As it did, first we started with a climber asking Muzazi if she could go with him. He said no, but promised he would protect the Supreme. Then, as they were leaving, he saw the shepherdess that Caesar mentioned that was meant to be like an omen of things changing right before he got turned into a painting pot on the landing pod. As the landing pod was coming down, the Supreme was standing on top of it like a mad lad, and he fired off a absurdly powered heartbeat shotgun that destroyed part of the base and destroyed the turrets that were going to be used to shoot down the landing pods.
And it turned a dude who never amounted anything into much.
Yeah, inside his armour. It then landed, and he went off to take a nap somewhere, as Muzazi and the other special officers leapt out, and a spear destroyed the landing pod, fired by the hanged man.
Hanged man.
So they're running, charging, basically.
Nice. The first thing one must know in the heat of battle. Who are your allies and who are your enemies? The special officers charging with Atoy Muzazi were not ones he'd personally met before, but he'd always heard them spoken of favorably. The content of their character was unknown to him, but their competence was not in doubt. For that, at least, he could be grateful. Staying out in the open was not an option, what with the firepower regiment Red still commanded. Before they'd landed, they'd gone through the best way to approach the base, and Winston Grace had pointed it out to them immediately. This pyramid was surrounded by networks of natural caverns and tunnels, running all throughout the area. They'd landed near one of the entrances to the network. By moving through it, they could get close while gaining cover from artillery. As they passed out of the blazing outside to the darkness of the cave, Muzazi glanced at his temporary companions. At first, he'd been leading the group, but Anastasia Darkdancer had quickly taken the lead. She was a small, pungent woman with star-shaped jewelry covering her blonde hair and red jacket, a wild grin on her face as she weaved through obstacles. Weaved was the best word for it, for she was riding a hoverboard that granted her additional speed and maneuverability. Perhaps it was some kind of aether armament, too? Difficult to tell. Be careful, grunted Maisel. Is it Mazel or Maisel?
Maisel.
Grunted Maisel Rowe, running alongside Muzazi. Might be traps. Maisel was a young man with black skin and short blonde hair, a bulky plasma rifle clutched in his hands as he ran. Plentiful canisters of plasma were laid out on a bandolier wrapped around his chest, presumably for reloading purposes. I don't think you need to describe that. I think you could just leave it at his chest. What else would it be for? Muzazi? I eat these. It's clobbering time. Muzazi had been surprised when he'd heard this man's name. Someone with the blood of a former contender would be fighting alongside him. Hopefully that strength had been passed on. Agreed, gurgled... Oh. Agreed, gurgled Trucio Harshin Moldon... You're gonna have to be nice to me with this name. Trucio Harshin Maldonado.
Yes, you got it.
A short ways behind. Anyone who can fly should fly, or at least not touch the ground. The older man was a scurrant with an extended and engorged throat, his wide, flat eyes staring off in opposite directions as he ran. Stinkfly! Once he finished... Sorry, Ben 10 on the brain. Once he finished speaking, he opened his mouth again, and from that mouth, 3 long and prehensile tongues lashed out, linking up to the ceiling. This guy's kissing game is insane.
Like a pickup artist.
Yeah! How to pick
What's
up
your body
women!
count?
So wait, he's got like a frog face or something?
He's like a frogman, yeah.
With 3 tongues? Damn.
What that mouth
It was a
do?
disgusting sight. To some, maybe. But Maldonado swung from the rocks quite elegantly, pulling himself along without ever touching the ground. Can you imagine swinging by your tongue? You have to taste everything you're touching, like the ceiling and the walls. Oh, it's so gross, Tan. The last of their number did not say anything, but Muzazi found himself looking at him all the same. He really couldn't help it. Jester Marble was a sight to behold, after all. He was a scurrant like Maldonado, but of an entirely different breed. There was not the slightest trace of hair or blemish on his dark blue body, his skin visibly smooth and shiny, so he's like Dr. Manhattan.
Well, perhaps we'll see.
In place of eyes, he had vertical rows of long red orifices, 3 on each side of his face. They slowly breathed as Muzazi looked at them, reminding him of gills. If Jester Marble noticed the attention, he did not show it. He just continued running at the back of the group, his hands planted together in a gesture of prayer. He had a necklace of prayer beads hanging from his neck, too. Perhaps he was the religious type? Ordinarily, the tunnel they were running through would have been...
aesthetic.
I'm a poser, I must admit. I picked these up on Etsy. Space Etsy. What is the Aetheral Space equivalent of Etsy? Think about that while I keep reading. Ordinarily, the tunnel they were running through would have been pitch black, but their combined aether illuminated their surroundings. Muzazi held as radiant in front of himself like a lantern as they moved out of the tunnel and into a larger cavern. This place was far better lit than the rest of the cave, with electric lighting fixtures bolted onto the walls and ceiling of the cave. The room was empty, but Muzazi could see countless large square indentations on the cavern floor. Had they been using this as some kind of storage facility then? If so, there must be a way into the main complex from here. He was just turning his head to tell his comrades that, when he noticed them. He noticed them, clinging to the outside of the entrance they'd just run through. He noticed them, staring at him with their glowing red eyes. He noticed them, and the spears they carried. Atoy Muzazi had never seen these things in person before, but he was familiar with history. During the reign of Gale the Golden, more than 100 years ago, the Supremacy had attempted an invasion of Paradise's territory. It had been disastrous, and many powerful Aether users had been killed. It had been said that had been, in no small part, due to the elite automatics the Paradises had dispatched. Over the years of peace, they'd been phased out, but Muzazi recognized the design from the history books. The Executioners. Automatics designed specifically to kill Aether users. He opened his mouth to warn his colleagues. When one of them shot him in the back? This can't keep happening to him. Why did you write that in, Tan? Why did you do that to him? Explain. Tell the audience.
It's his fate.
His back... among all swordsmen, they're like, I have no scars on my back, and Muzazi's just
back.
riddled with scars.
No
He's like, I've never ran away from combat, I swear! It's just a very unfortunate.
So many cowards' wounds.
Oh, that's sad. That should totally be a thing later where, like, a master swordsman won't train him because of his back wounds. He's like, you don't understand, I've simply been betrayed.
By everyone and everything.
Yeah! Oh, so these are not the Arcanum, right? These are a new kind of automatic?
These are like rank and file, like Aether Hunters.
Nice. The third pod came down right outside the burning forest, forcing Paradise Karen to put a disguised sleeve to her nose as she took in... What's up?
Disgusted it is. Not disguised.
Oh, sorry. Paradise Karen to put a disgusted sleeve to her nose as she took in the stink of burning wood. She dressed in green military camouflage for this venture, but it seemed she'd have been better off picking red. The Supreme truly didn't know any restraint at all. She checked the imaging of the battlefield on her script. It seemed he'd taken out the turrets on this side, at least. We've now got a blind spot on one side of the base, that kid Grace spoke over the communicator. Changing the landing spots to take advantage. The other special officers that had come down in this pod had already split up, seeking individual glory as they headed off with their mass-destructive abilities. Paradise Karen was the only one who had stayed at the landing zone. Her and her companion. Baron Lunelay de Fleur pulled one of his pitchforks from his aether, twirling it over his shoulder as he stepped up next to her. A smirk played across his lips as he took in the sight of the inferno before him. "Quite a view," he purred. "Is Atoy Muzazi nearby?" Paradise crossed her arms. "Don't you worry about him. I've got him in hand. You have your role. I've sent you the new coordinates for the next few landing zones. Link up with the special officers there and cull the herd." "Oh?" Lunelay raised an eyebrow. "How treacherous of you." He shrugged lightly. But I'll do as I'm bid. It's a more invigorating task at any rate. With that, he began to stride off into the burning woods, whistling a merry tune as if he wasn't walking into a vision of hell. Paradise watched him as he went. Such a curious man. He had the resources required to have anything he wanted and never work a day in his life, yet he still brought himself out to the battlefield in this way. Perhaps he was like Wu Ming, a battle junkie? No. Paradise dismissed the notion immediately. Lunalei didn't care at all for fighting. He only enjoyed the slaughter that followed. Massacre was his relaxation. That hell was his element. I'm going to counter all Aether villains. Appointment is he hates fighting. It's just a job to him. Just for future reference. The Baron Lunalei de Fey... Oh, de Fey?
No, sorry, de Fleur.
Huh?
Oh my God.
I thought you were introducing a new Baron. The Baron Lunalei de Fleur, at full power, he was one of the 3 special officers closest to the rank of contender. Paradise almost felt sorry for the hapless dissidents he'd surely encounter. Right on the threshold of the flames, the Baron turned and glanced quizzically at Paradise once again. You said Atoy Muzazi was in hand, he said. Out of curiosity, how many infiltrators did you send with him? How many traitors are there on that team of his? Despite her best efforts, Paradise chuckled. What makes you think any of them aren't traitors? She said. No! Can we get... You know what we need is like some 2008, like, edgy, like, emo music AMVs of Muzazi. It's like, this animal I have become! And it's like a compilation of him getting shot in the back. Help me believe that's not the real me! Oh, did you ever used to watch those?
No, but I know of them. I'd watched them, but...
I watched them religiously. Do you want to take over for a bit so I can sip my tea?
Sure. Muzazi's Aether blunted the blow, but he still found himself collapsing to the floor, a burning pain in his lower back. Red-hot plasma dripped to the floor. See, I just wrote that into existence.
This guy's an author.
The executioners didn't miss their chance. There were 3 of them, and with blinding speed they pounced, bringing down their spears towards Muzazi's prone form. Head, heart, spine, each aimed for a different killing blow. Thrusters blazed across Muzazi's side, sending him sliding across the ground and out of the attack's range. The spears lodged into the ground as they stabbed the spot he'd just been, their heads snapping to follow his movement as he barely escaped to death. The pain in his back was excruciating. He'd been ready for an attack from the front, so the distribution of his Aether had been uneven. Hot anger flowed from Muzazi's brain, not at his enemies, but himself. He'd fallen for it again.
It's so sad, right? That, like, this is, like, not okay. He should have so much trauma. Where's his Aether therapist?
If I got isekai'd into the Aetheral Space, well, Muzazi would kill me.
No, he wouldn't. He would like, trust you, and then you'd betray him.
If he knew. If only he knew.
If only he knew. Who do you think wrote all those people shooting you in the back, Muzazi?
I've shot you 1,000 times by now, through different hands.
You're just my little punching bag.
Every author has one.
No.
More thrusters forced Muzazi to his feet, pushing through the agony. He turned his head to his supposed comrades just in time to see their escape.
Wait, they didn't even finish the job?
As Anastasia Dart Dancer did a loop in the air, leaving tiny twinkling stars in the wake of her movements, just as Mount Arbel ran through the exit beneath her. Maldonado and Maisel Rowe remained in the chamber with Muzazi and the executioners, positioning themselves so as to keep an eye on both other parties. Muzazi narrowed his eyes, positioning himself similarly, and as he shifted his footing, those tiny twinkling stars detonated, biting into the ceiling and causing a cascade of rocks to fall down over the exits. Fantastic. So now he was sealed in, too. The executioners would go after them as well, Muzazi thought, ignoring his radiant... igniting that... Sorry, I was like, what the fuck did I mean by this? Igniting his radiance and lowering himself into a combat stance. They'll want to let me and the automatics soften each other up and then take us both down. As if he would allow such a cowardly tactic. Muzazi was just about to fly at the special officers, when he felt pain. A new kind of pain, as if his skin was melting off. Heat buffeting against his body from above. Muzazi looked up, and immediately, as a drop landed in his eye, he wished he hadn't. An orange cloud hung directly above him, a constant ray of plasma falling from it directly onto his body. Muzazi moved to dodge, smoke already rising from his burns. and the cloud followed, endlessly pursuing the spot right above his head.
He's getting 4v1'd right now, right?
5v1.
Well, wasn't there 6 people, but the Supreme was among them and went for a nap?
Well,
so there's 4.
I'm counting the Executioners because the other 2 left. Jester Marble and Anastasia left.
Oh, how many Executioners are there?
3.
Okay, I see.
So it's more like a 2v1v3 right now.
I gotcha.
You slashed at him as radiant, and the attack passed right through. Rainy day, Maisel Rowe intoned, his eyes cold as he stared Muzazi down. Sorry, there's no way to get rid of it. One of his canisters was empty. I'm putting this in now.
Oh, wow. So they weren't presumably for reloading. It was all just to throw us off, guys.
No way. Not the case. If this plasma control was Rowe's ability, all Muzazi had to do was eliminate Rowe. He lunged forward at the man with the rifle, intent to unleash a flurry of slashes before Rainy Day could catch up. Only to be stopped in his tracks as one of Maldonado's tongues whipped itself towards the back of his leg. It's nothing personal, said Maldonado, his wide eyes staring.
No.
Muzazi was forced to whirl around to block the attack, but that gave the Executioners enough time to leap at him once again. Spears reared back for killing strikes. In this situation, responding to one attack meant opening himself up for another. The plasma rained down, hot as flame. The spears came down, fast as lightning. Muzazi gritted his teeth. They thought he could be taken down by mere fire and lightning. There was a silver flash as Muzazi moved, his hand becoming a blur for but the briefest of moments. A second later, the executioners around him collapsed into pieces, utterly dismembered. Their red eyes dimmed to black before shutting off completely. If these people wanted him dead, they'd have to send better than antiques.
Oh!
Plasma pouring down his face and eating away at his uniform, Muzazi glared up at his remaining 2 adversaries. He couldn't see out of one of his eyes, but that was fine. Against opponents like this, there was no need for him to see. Next! He snarled.
And then he gets shot in the back again by Dragon. Says, "Did you miss me, Muzazi? You're such a villain."
You simply left yourself so wide open, I couldn't resist. Is your throat healed? Has the panacea healed your throat lining?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that my throat was hurt yet, I just wanted to enjoy my tea,
okay.
But I'm good to read. The second his consciousness returned, Morgan Noct pulled his saber free from his scabbard, leaping out of the pod into the forest beyond. The capsule had crashed through the woods, destroying the surrounding trees, and Morgan found himself perching on a fallen log as he surveyed the area. Fuck, what was his voice?
It was like
Ioneer?
Yeah.
He muttered. Anything? That base is north of here, Ioneer replied without a voice, its thoughts immediately apparent. The people there often come out into the forests. They have laid traps, but the simpletons remember the locations. I will direct you. Right, Morgan nodded. He glanced back towards the pod as another special officer emerged, a scurrant with a cuboid head and thin, fuzzy brown hair. The man spun his mace in his hand as he looked around the clearing, before turning his own gaze to Morgan.
The amount of restraint that I needed not to give him a pickaxe.
Team up! He croaked. Oh wait, I learned a trick. Hang on. Watch this.
He's powering up.
Team up, he croaked. Easier to get points as a duo, I imagine. How's that for raspy, huh? Is it bad? It might be bad.
It's fantastic.
It's bad. Sorry, I'm trying a new thing. I heard it's easier to do that for a raspy voice on your throat than what I was doing for Klaus before. Morgan considered it for a moment. Ideally, he'd prefer to have joined up with Muzazi before doing anything else, but there was no telling where the commander would be. This cubed man could potentially be one of Paradise Karen's people, but he didn't seem too strong. If it came down to it, Morgan was fairly confident he could take him. Sure, Morgan nodded. My Aether ability helps with navigation. I can get us through the forest. Anyone else coming out of there? The cubed man looked back into the pot. I love how that's capitalized. Before cumbersomely shaking his heavy head. It seems I'm the last one out. Morgan frowned. Had everyone else just run off or something? If people were going to act like that, this wasn't an army. This was just a bunch of assholes running around in the woods with guns. That is just airsoft. Enemy, said Ioneer. The simpletons have spotted them. Immediately, Morgan twisted his body in the direction relayed to him. How far away? He asked, voice low. The cubed man furrowed his brow. What? My ability tells me about nearby enemies, Morgan lied, before asking again. How far away? 2 kilometers. There. Oh. Oh? Morgan echoed. Well, they're gone. Morgan faltered for a moment. I think you're echoing me, by the way.
Sorry.
You're okay, no worries.
I'm so sorry.
They left? No, they disappeared. 1 second they were there, and the next... Move! Before Morgan could even wonder why his companion was suddenly so panicked, he heard a new voice speak. A voice he'd never heard before! Coming directly from above! A voice that said just 2 words! Gemini World! Morgan left without looking, and it was a good thing he did, too. For a second later, the spot he'd been standing had been destroyed. A man clad in a green cloak had come down out of the sky, destroying the log with a single kick from his muscular legs. As Morgan slid to a halt next to the cubed man, the 2 of them squared off against the new arrival. The young man wait, what? This wasn't Dragon?
Perhaps he dropped someone off.
Oh, he's just zipping people around the battlefield? The young man... I thought we were getting Dragon fighting Morgan. That would have been so sick. The young man had antlers, Morgan noticed, as he threw his cloak over his shoulders. Another skirrant? You guys must be the Supremacy, huh? The man said. It wasn't the same voice as that Gemini World cry. There aren't many of you. Don't worry, though. I've got enough friends on the way for both of us. Is this the naked guy? Is this Ablos? Oh, Morgan... So I won't know if my voice is accurate or not. Morgan held his sword out in front of him, and the cubed man did the same with his mace. The 2 of them could tell instinctively, as warriors, that this was a man who knew what he was doing, the way he destroyed the environment, and the cold relaxation in his posture. This was no stranger to murder. That wasn't what caught their attention first, though. Do you realize, Morgan said, that you're buck-ass naked? Oh, scandalous! Dragon reappeared for a second, emerging out of Gemini World, and landing atop a cliff that overlooked the forest. What if he fucked up and just, 24 people were stuck as Aether forever? Just horrifying accident. Be like the Hindenburg. No one would ever record themselves again. Emerging out of Gemini World and landing atop a cliff that overlooked the forest. Immediately, he put a hand to his ear. Sorry. Where next? He panted into the communicator. Ever since the battle had begun, he'd been running back and forth, using Gemini World to ferry people to various destinations across the battlefield. Rest was an impossibility. Their forces only had 2 Aether users capable of rapid transportation. Himself and a member of Regiment Red named Jacob. Jacob's ability, the road less traveled, could transport many people at once, but only non-Aether users, and only across a preset path. Wait, what? Why only non-Aether users?
It's the condition to do lots of people at once.
Oh, that's fucked. The task of getting the powerful attackers into position fell to Dragon, then. Ablos was powerful enough, apparently, that he should be able to deal with the special officers there himself until reinforcements showed up on foot. Dragon had to keep moving. Main pyramid, the operator's voice came back. Klaus is starting to send out the sensory clouds. The enemy will target him directly once they realize he's the source. Get Del sent to him as an additional bodyguard. Dragon looked to the pyramid, and indeed he could see a great white fog beginning to billow out from within it. That cloud basically served as a permanent Aether ping for Klaus L. He could sense the position and strength of anything it touched. Once it was distributed across the battlefield, it would be invaluable for information gathering. Does he literally have a fog of war?
Yeah.
Nice. Still, once the enemy came to understand what the fog did, you have no time, the fog's coming.
That's his
They'd
ability.
probably... the fog is coming, that's what it's called. They'd probably go after Klaus with everything they had. Worst case scenario, it could be contender gunning for him. Was that really something Bruno and Serena could handle? No. Dragon shook his head. The time for doubt had long since passed. He had his job now, and they had theirs. All they could do was follow the roads they'd made to wherever they ended up. Faith didn't even come into it. On it, Dragon replied to the operator before falling back into Gemini World. The blue spark of Aether that was him zipped over the forest, heading back towards the pyramid. So how fast can he travel?
Very fast.
For reference. Okay, that's not... Sure. Oh, that's fine.
The speed of plot.
The speed of plot. Paradise Karen took it all in, spreading her arms wide. She could hear it now, the sound of warfare all around. Gunfire breaking through the woods, blades cutting into flesh, screams rising up towards the sky. Pillars of smoke rose from each of the landing pods, now 9, that had brought the special officers down to the planet. So there's 45 people here right now.
Yeah.
Or 54, rather. I did math bad. 9 times 6 is 54. Another would be... Wait, is it? 9, 18, 27, 36, 40. Yeah, 54. We're good. I swear I'm good at math. Another would be sending in around 30 seconds' time. Slowly but surely, the combined might of the supremacy would overwhelm whatever petty malice Regiment Red had accumulated. In this world, justice belonged to the side with the greater numbers. Skill was not a concern. The moment there were more special officers on Elysian fields than dissidents, the battle would effectively be over. It couldn't come soon enough. Paradise narrowed her eyes as she looked at the dense woodland around her. Places like this reminded her of home. Disgusting. Her stroll through the forest paused for just a moment as she spotted something up ahead, slowly approaching. A wall of white mist crawling over the ground and curling its fingers around the forest. Looking left and looking right, she couldn't quite see an end to the incoming wave. It was like the woods itself were being devoured. I would use woods themselves.
Oh, yeah.
This was clearly some kind of Aether ability. What exactly it did she could not say, but she was in no mood to let it hit her. Sighing softly to herself, she raised up her palm. She didn't much like getting her hands dirty, but if it meant getting this whole production finished quickly, she'd grit her teeth and power through. Closing her eyes, Paradise Karen opened her ears to her ally, her Aether ability.
Has the time come, mistress? May we unburden ourselves? Queried the Forest of Sin. Let us out, miss. Let us have our fun. Let us skewer and shave and scalp,
giggled the Forest of Sin.
Do not meddle with us, witch. Release us. Release us now!
Snarled the Forest of Sin. Ordinarily, Paradise wouldn't want to encourage this kind of behavior by caving into her ability's demands. But in this case, for once, they were of a single mind. She opened her eyes. Around a quarter of the total capacity should be sufficient. Forest of Sin. For the purposes of battle planning, every member... Or actually, can I popcorn this to you?
Yeah, sure. For the purposes of battle planning, is it because Cloud has a line?
Maybe.
Every member of Regiment Red had been provided with medical implants. They constantly observed the stats of their assigned units, tracking their heartbeat, breathing, body temperature, reading every signal the human body could produce. One signal reigned above all others, of course. In the end, it was the only one that mattered. Death. Klaus L. hunched over the war table as he saw countless red blots of death sprout up over the battlefield, forming a path directly towards him. Damn it! He barked. The thing that exploded across the surface of Elysian Fields could not possibly be called a forest. It was an abomination, a malignant tumour of wood and leaf, with rotted black bark and blood-red fruit. The trees that formed it were twisted and grotesque, branches and trunks warped into the shapes of screaming faces and writhing bodies. Looked at from above, the massive new area of woodland, nearly 10 kilometres all around, took an even more unsettling shape. The trees strangled around each other, the grass nibbled itself, and the leaves grinned like wolves. They formed it. They formed the shape that crawled across the world. It took the shape of a massive malformed fetus, its hand outstretched towards the pyramid. All in all, it formed a bridge from Paradise Karen's position directly to the enemy base all by itself. And then there was the noise. The Forest of Sin giggled. The Forest of Sin cackled. The Forest of Sin screamed.
And Ioneer said, I know this isn't your heart. Please respond. Alright, do you have anything? We decided we're going to try and check in on that Aether questions thread, perhaps, for our fun facts this week.
There was a question from, let me get up here, that caught my eye. I'm just going to ask the last couple, basically. Are there any Aether martial arts competitions, says JTKC?
Are there Aether what?
Aether martial arts competitions.
Yes.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I don't know about competitions, but there's the six golden belts. These words.
The six what?
The 6 golden belt competition. It's basically
6 golden belt.
Yeah, 6 golden belts.
Okay, tell me about it.
Basically, it's a competition to test the skills of martial artists using Aether. So it's like a series of challenges. It's sort of like a more formal Takeshi's Castle, essentially, in terms of challenges.
So since both Aether and in an anime setting like this, martial arts are very broad, I imagine there's some requirement, like you must at least use some Aether, and you must at least use some martial arts.
And
there's
you
like
get your sort of
restrictions.
yearly rankings of it, how many golden belts you've attained.
Okay, I see. So golden belts are something you get in the competition.
Yeah.
And they're all like status,
Exactly,
prestige.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like 13 out of 10 golden belts.
Impossible.
Is it?
Yoshi Rigatoni says, is genuine mind control or even simple ordering within a confine of rules possible using Aether? Obviously, Aether defense would stop it for someone strong, but what about people without Aether? Absolutely, it's possible.
I think I did ask you about this before very early in the series too, didn't I? And you were like, anyone who has Aether can resist it pretty well, but non-Aether people absolutely could get Jedi mind tricked.
Absolutely. And if an Aether user was not protecting themselves with Aether, it would also work on them.
Mm-hmm.
Orchid says, in Arc 2, Helga explains that a type of Scurrent is called Scurrent A193, with the A standing for aesthetic type. What other categories of Scurrents are there? There is M for military
I assume B
type.
for battle type.
B for battle type is
mind.
better, actually, yeah. U for utility type.
You just changed it. Wait, what was the next one you just said?
U for utility.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's an S for sex type. There has to be.
punishment type.
Punishment type? Oh, right, because they could change people at will, so they might have once been something else. Your whole bloodline is now the Hunchback of Notre Dame. S for swag type? Actually, if there's a P for punishment, is there an R for reward? Like, people who served well and they got made cool, badass muscle people or whatever?
That would be fit under P for Praetorian.
Wait, I thought it was P for punishment.
Oh, no, that's a different one.
Wait, what?
R for Royal.
There's two. R for Royal, I gotcha. That's pretty cool. So what type of Scurrent would you say the Frogman was? Give me his letter and number.
Utility type. He was Scurrent U223.
You know what's really fucked up, by the way?
Yeah.
That category and the fact that they have number designations for every change implies that all the Gene Tyrants communicated with each other about what they created, and they had essentially a Pokedex of fucking Scurrents. Like, legitimately, that's all that can mean, right? So it was standardized. It's like, here's how I made it. Here's what it likes to eat.
The frog Scurrents.
Yeah, exactly. They probably had informal names for them. It's fucked up, but also really funny. That's what they should discover, is like the Scurrent Pokedex. It's like, we need to find it so we know what medicine to save his life. Oh my god. Alright. Is that all for today?
That's all I've got.
Alright. Well, thank you guys, as always, for listening and watching. I'm really excited about this chapter. If Atoy Muzazi actually dies, I'm going to be pissed off. I did not like the name of this chapter. That made me upset. But otherwise, it was good.
He was meant to die, but he was simply too strong. I couldn't kill him.
We'll see you guys next time.
I got them, the executioners, the special officers. He can't get out of this.
I will say, if he did die to random characters introduced in this chapter, that would be pretty lame. All that build up, and it's just like fucking.
It's over, and then he types in then I killed them.
Defeated by Frogman.
What? You were meant to die from that.
No one's ever survived my cross tongue slash attack.
You don't know what those tongues do, though.
Bye.
Bye.